Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we usually explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. But today, we're exploring the influence of Die Hard on Christmas movies, one Christmas movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Home Alone.
It's Die Hard in a kids movie. Christmas special. Here we go. 1 year in.
1 year in. To honor this momentous occasion, we have an incredible guest who is also the first guest to return to the show for a second time because we love him so much and we're such huge fans of his. Please welcome the one and only Mr. Paul Scheer.
Gentlemen, I'm so excited to be back. I don't remember where this idea came from, if it was after we stopped recording in the last episode or we talked about it on air. But since we started talking about this idea, I've been just chomping at the bit to really have a place, a forum to finally bring the truth out about Home Alone and Die Hard. I feel like we have for a long time not been able to bridge this gap. People don't want to talk about it, but you are not afraid to go there, and I am thrilled.
Well, we should all say very quickly that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. And this is a Christmas podcast as a result of it being a Christmas movie. So we're very excited to talk Christmas any old time of the year, but particularly right now in this time of the year.
And we're breaking the format for this because usually I'm a real stickler for the chronology.
You're a real Scrooge for the format.
for format about that we go chronologically through all these action movies. But funnily enough, a lot of people had asked us, like, are you ever going to do Home Alone? And then I remember somewhere in the cosmos, I absorbed that Paul had this theory that Home Alone was a Die Hard movie. And the stars just, when you came on for Clear and Present Danger, the stars just aligned for us to do this. So I'm so excited about it. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, Paul, was off the bat, was what's your personal relationship with this movie?
Honestly, when Home Alone came out, it felt like a kid's movie to me. Like I was a little bit older than the perfect audience for this film. And I felt like, not for me. I liked it. It was good, but it wasn't like, this is my defining film. You know, as I've gotten older, I've really come to love it. And with kids now, I've watched it so many times. I appreciate the hell out of this movie. Like there's so much good stuff in Home Alone. And I think it actually is this perfect mix of John Hughes and Christopher Columbus. There's nothing really wasted in this movie. Everything's really smart and better than it should be. I think as a kid, seeing a kid in a movie going like, that's a kid's movie. I'm a little bit older than that. It felt like I'm keeping it at arm's length, but it has grown to be one of my favorite John Hughes movies, even though it's not a John Hughes movie technically. It is written by John Hughes, but it really does have the perfect stamp of both of them. Like both of them at their peak kid movie. Like this is, you know, yes, there's been Curly Sue's, there's been, you know, Harry Potter, the first one, like, but this is kind of like them mastering this form of making a movie starring a kid that is actually a great film.
Yeah, it's these two sensibilities kind of perfectly combining. I was curious if Liam, did you see it when it came out at the theater? Because I didn't discover it till a few years ago, really. Like not discover, but when it's sort of I was a late bloomer on this one. But
I was 8 years old when this movie came out, and Fun fact, today is my birthday.
Hey.
So it's very possible that this was a birthday movie with my family. I'm sure I went to the movies for my birthday with this. I'm sure that's what we did as like our birthday celebration. So yes, very close to my heart, this movie. I hadn't watched it in a long time, and I just want to double down. Watching this film now as a 41-year-old adult with children, it's a completely different experience. It's like kind of amazing. And I think that that's a great thing about a movie. When you watch it at a different age and you go like, oh, wow, I'm having a different experience than I would have had if I were, you know, an 8-year-old watching this film.
I think one of the things that's really interesting is that John Hughes, I think, always stepped up a little bit. The casting in this movie is fantastic. I mean, everyone scores, and there are emotional moments in here. And I think a lot about how this movie almost didn't get made because Christopher Columbus was on National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and like realized how much of an asshole Chevy Chase was, and was like, I gotta go. And John Hughes, who also produced that, another great Christmas movie, I also love that as well, was like, hey, no, come over here. Let's go make this one instead. So it wasn't like Christopher Columbus was looking to make a kids movie. I think he brought a sensibility of just making a great, I mean, let's be honest, a Die Hard movie, and just happened to star a kid.
Yeah, and I gathered that he brought in the subplot with the Marley stuff, which we'll talk about, which gave it another dimension. Like you're saying, it's actually so many different films. It does so much. But before we get too far into that, let's just run a little top line fact check so we can put this in a little bit of context.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Home Alone, Phil.
Well, you will remember this, Liam, because when you were a wee nipper, in November 16th, 1990 was when this movie came out. It was released by 20th Century Fox, the same studio as Die Hard, written and produced by John Hughes. So that's why it's a John Hughes movie, but it's kind of not a John Hughes movie, but it is. It was directed by Chris Columbus. And of course, it stars Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, Catherine O'Hara, and John Hurd, amongst many others.
Insane.
As you said, all-star cast.
What an insane cast.
Yes.
And Kieran Culkin, which is crazy to think about now.
And on an estimated budget of $18 million, it grossed, are you ready for this? $476.7 million. It was number one at the box office for 12 weeks, 3 months. Like, what a monster.
Monoculture stuff. 90s monoculture stuff. Incredible.
Wild.
One of the things I remember about this film that is a real, like, just a moment for me, or a dividing line about how successful this film was at this point when VHS tapes came out. They were really expensive. Like, they were like $100 a tape, right? You couldn't buy a VHS tape. But this was one of the handful of movies. I remember Temple of Doom being one of them and Home Alone being the other one that was in the supermarket for $20. So when I went to the supermarket as a kid, you could come home with Home Alone. And I remember buying it because it's like, oh my gosh, I have a chance to own a movie. But it was so successful that they knew, oh, we'll make bank. We don't need to rent this out. We'll just have everyone buy this. And this is like, again, we're talking, it's a different time in culture. It was next to impossible to own a VHS movie. And this is a movie that is rare in that air for me, or at least my memory of it as being like, oh, it was like by the box office hit that changed everything. And I can only imagine how much it made on resale.
Oh my God, a monster. I also remember that being true with like Batman. I remember buying Batman 89 on VHS tape, and that kind of being a moment, and how everyone had a copy of that, because it was still kind of a cool curiosity to own a VHS tape at this point. So everyone was buying, the classics, or like the clamshell Disney movies, or whatever the case might be.
And it speaks to the rewatchability of the movie. Like, it's almost like renting it. It's that would be too ephemeral. It's like, this is, I watched this movie twice in a week, both times, and it was like a new experience each time. I'm like, I'm fully present with this movie. It's a movie you can watch multiple times. It's just, it's great.
There's a lot of nooks and crannies in this movie. And I think when I rewatch it, and I've watched the new Home Alone, and by the way, Home Alone 2 is the one I had the most disdain for, and in the rewatch of that, I'm like, it might even be better.
It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
It's what they do on Home Alone 2, which is so interesting, is it's like a meta version of Home Alone. It's like, we know we're doing this again, and everyone's kind of aware of it, but yet at the same time, they give you everything you want. But this movie is a Tom and Jerry cartoon. This movie is it's very much like a Coyote and Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. And I think that's what makes it watchable from a just visual point of view. But then they give you all this stuff that you don't expect movies like this to have. And when you watch that new Home Alone, sorry to go back to my original point, which I think is terrible. And I think it's terrible because they try so hard to make everybody likable, or everybody, it's like the bad guys aren't bad guys. Like here, it's like, these are bad guys. They're goofy. They're trying to hurt a kid. There are scary people in the world. Like there's a couple of like real things about this movie that I feel like, we talk a lot about, oh, they can't remake this movie. You couldn't remake this movie. They've tried to remake this movie. They can't. They won't. Like, studios are too afraid, I think, to make something where kids are like legit in danger. Like Kevin's legit in danger.
Yeah. When they hang him up on that scene, when they hang him up on the door, you're like, they're gonna kill this kid.
Yeah.
It's the only thing
Thank
that
God
could
for
possibly
Marley,
happen.
coming in. I got quite nervous, and I just watched it like a few days ago, and I was like, oh come on, Marley, let's go. I'm worried about Kevin.
I know, and it's a movie that I think in pop culture discourse, something is always, it comes back up a lot, right? Because it is something like, Liam, what you're saying, like you can rewatch it with your family. It's something that when it's on, like it's so fun to watch. You can jump in at any point. And even as recently as this week, the New York Times wrote a giant article about Home Alone. They wrote an article that came out this week about how wealthy are the McAllisters, and they went to literally went to the Federal Reserve for answers, and they're like, they are the 1%. Like they are, like to this day, they went back, they looked at the address, they saw the income, but they said 1990, this house was only affordable to the top 1% of Chicago household incomes, and it would still be the case today. And that's according to economists at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago.
Wow.
So the flag for me was John Hurd's Burberry jacket that is pretty sick.
Well, you guys know the theory, the online theory that he's in the mob, right? There's this whole Reddit theory that he is in the mob that someone was like, you have to talk about that on this episode. And I was like, that might be for another episode. But you can go on Reddit. There's someone who wrote this long theory about the fact that the McAllisters are mobbed up.
Right. And the idea that like Kevin is so used to this brutal violence because he's been grown up in this society.
He's probably also seen Die Hard.
Wow. We are through the looking glass here, people. And speaking of which, while we spoke about these analogies and to other movies that are a little more darker and a little more violent, why don't we move into this section? This is why everybody bought their ticket today. We're going to move into the section Die Hard DNA.
Stole my line.
Sorry, I stole that for you. I just got too excited.
It's Christmas, so I'm going to be generous about it. But
I got too excited. Which is where we basically put these movies under the microscope and look at how they connect to the original 1988 masterpiece, Die Hard. Now, I have made a list, but I want to yield the floor to Mr. Paul Scheer. First of all, to lay this out for us, what were your headlines that you?
I can see a giant wall behind you with notes. It's got
this
little
is my JFK right here.
Gyllenhaal and Zodiac vibes at Paul's place right now.
All right, so I was rewatching this film with the intent to have this conversation. So these are things that I'm going to pull out. I think you can all jump in behind me here, but first of all, let's break it down to the first central premise of Die Hard. He is a fish out of water. New York City cop in LA doesn't understand it, and I would say that this movie does something really interesting. Kevin is in his house, but it's not his house. It's all these other people in his house. So he's in a world that he doesn't understand. That's when all the family is there, right? So that's the first kind of things are off, right? He's not the right Kevin. He's already uncomfortable in the world. Now we're going to go one step further and go, well, now he's in the house that's familiar and now it's empty. So he has like almost two things that create this unevenness. The same thing that is in many respects the John McClane. John McClane has no shoes on. Kevin has a house without parents. Like that's I'm going to tie that together. It's like, oh yes, I know how to walk, but I can't do it well because I don't have my shoes. I know how to live in my house, but I don't have my parents. So that's like the shoes are the parents being gone, but the uneasiness of the day is the discombobulation that the extended family brings into it, making Kevin act like an asshole. I will also jump ahead for a second and say that we talked about Marley. To me, Marley is Reginald Vell Johnson. Reginald Vell Johnson was put on a desk job because he killed a kid. Marley has, forsaken his own son, got into an argument with his son, hasn't seen him in a long time, now is alone, right? So they have this this moment in the church where the two of them bond over, we are the same, like we are cut from the same cloth. I don't have a family and I miss it, but my family will come back. And Kevin tells him, you need to get your family back, like this moment. And if we want to continue that analogy one step further, well, who saves the day in Die Hard? Reginald Vell Johnson with the gun, the final shot of the movie. Yes, he doesn't kill Hans Gruber, but he kills the guy from the money pit.
Carl,
yeah, Carl.
Yeah.
And Marley comes in with that shovel, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's some base level stuff.
Also, they both all have regrets. Like they talk about their regrets, right? Like I regret treating my wife badly. I regret shooting this kid and losing my badge. And that's a big, not Halloween, excuse me. That's a big Christmas theme, which is like second chances, doing things over and over again and fixing them the next time.
And you know what else about that is that structurally it's in the exact same place in the movie, sort of end of Act 2, before all the third act chaos that comes. It's like a lowest point moment.
It's the taking the glass out of the foot, having that conversation, going to church. And look, sometimes people would say watching children sing in a choir is like having glass in your feet. So, I think that there is a connection there.
It's a come to Jesus moment in a way, isn't it? Like, almost literally in Home Alone, because they're at church, having that kind of crisis of conscience and and thinking about those deep matters. And in Die Hard, it's that kind of equivalent. It's sort of a spiritual crisis that occurs
100%.
at that moment, right?
Well, let's talk about Holly Gennaro and Catherine O'Hara. Also very much cut from the same cloth, right? Like Catherine O'Hara feels bad that she's banished her son, right? Holly Gennaro feels a little guilty. She's changed her name to Gennaro, not McClane. Did she, why they are separated is interesting in Die Hard. And we get more into it in the final, other ones. But like this moment of, there's some guilt. She sent him up to the room. She forgot him. She's trying to she believes that he'll be okay, but she is trying to get to him, right? There's a connection there with this woman, mother, wife on the side, trying to get, like she believes in John. She believes in Kevin. But she's still trying to get to him. And I feel like Holly is trying to get, messages to John or things to John, right? There's a connection there.
I want to go one step further and say that I think there's something that's really interesting is that like Kevin being banished to the attic, is almost like the way McClane shows up at the party. And like, Kevin wants attention, right? He wants to be the center of his mother's attention. McClane shows up and instead of going to the house and seeing his kids, his wife is like, please come to my kind of scuzzy work party with people you don't know. And he walks
Christmas
into this
Eve,
room.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gross. And he walks in this room and it's the last place he wants to be. And there's a nasty cocktail. And then she's like, okay, why don't you get cleaned up in this back room and we'll have an argument, which really nicely parallels the way that the mom brings Kevin upstairs and she's like, everyone in this house is having a good time except for you. So it's like they're both kind of bah humbugs right before Christmas.
Yes.
Right?
I like that. I like that.
Sort of excommunicated a little bit. They're pushed aside. They're marginalized. And as like you were saying earlier, Paul, they're both sort of vulnerable and disarmed because of that. They're uneasy. They don't feel like they fit. They're doesn't fit.
Out of step. Now let's go back to just the biggest idea here of Die Hard, the building, right? Nakatomi represents wealth, excessive wealth. Obviously Die Hard's done at a time where I think there's a little bit of a fear of like the Japanese. Like the Japanese are coming. They're going to take over. And they have this structure that's more impressive than anything else in the Los Angeles sky. I think one of the reasons why it's in Los Angeles is because you can put that up and it looks like a skyscraper. It looks, that's an impressive building.
Stands out against that skyline, yeah.
And so look, that's Kevin's house. I mean, that's the big tuna. That's the house that Marv and Harry, like they identify as that's the big score. Inside that house is the big score. Yes, they've pulled off other things, other operations. We could say that, the freeing, like this other, that's in the past have figured it out, but that house represents the same thing. It's wealth. They know inside that house they're going to get the wealth that they need. That's the big score they have for their holiday season.
Well, not to mention that at the beginning of the movie, Joe Pesci is masquerading as a police officer trying to get into the house and sort of like make everyone feel comfortable. Similarly to the way that Hans is like, I'm a leftist, I guess, freedom fighter, fighting for my comrades in arms, when really he's just running a heist in the background, right? Like, there's this sort of similarity.
I'd also say that, like, it's the costuming of it, right? Because it's sort of like there is something about him dressing in a certain way that allows you to feel like, oh, is it like he doesn't look like a terrorist. Hans doesn't look like a movie terrorist that we were associated with. Again, so we meet Joe Pesci's character in this police costume. Yeah, you're right. He's putting on an air, like trying to create this other version of himself. We never get to see what Hans looks like, but although in that security footage, we kind of see a picture of what Hans may dress like normally.
Totally.
Like, where they,
yes.
And to go one even further than that, it sets up this really interesting, cool, dramatic irony. So one of the things that's great about Die Hard, Paul, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. So one of the things that's interesting about Die Hard is that one of the great, McTiernan's a dramatist, right? He's a Shakespeare guy. He called Die Hard his Midsummer Night's Dream, right? And one thing he does better than anybody is dramatic irony. So there's a point in the movie when we know that Hans is Hans. McClane is offering him a cigarette. He takes the German cigarettes. He sort of quizzes him, "What's your name?" And Rickman goes, "Clay, Bill Clay." And then he looks up and looks for the name on the screen. And we as an audience are so caught up in that. There's a moment later in the movie where, in Home Alone, I should say, where Kevin almost gets hit by the van, and he turns and he looks, and Pesci, who's incredible, goes, "Amazing. All right, Merry Christmas." That's the worst Joe Pesci impression possible. But then he glimmers, and Kevin recognizes him as the cop. Like, there's this
from the tooth.
There's these things that we know as an audience that, like, do the characters know? Does he know that? That's the same guy?
Putting it. But we see, like, they make a very, they even ding it with like a little sound effect in the beginning, like dink, like when he's out there as the cop, like, "Hey kid, don't worry about it." Like, you see that, so it is like, it's not saying, like, we know Kevin's onto it. Like, we know, and so he's equally as smart as McClane is about his surroundings and seeing what's going on.
He's like a cop. He's a detective in that moment, right? And that's one thing that there are a lot of cops in Die Hard. There's only one detective, right? And that's something that is so, like, he's always a little ahead of the game. He's always a little smart, and everyone underestimates him, right? Rickman's like, "What are you, John Wayne Rambo?" And they're like, "He's just a kid. How much damage can a little kid do?" And like, he is on to everything before anybody else is.
Well, there's a point I wanted to make about the cops, because there was another story beat that struck me as, again, almost identical and almost structurally in the same place, which is that both John McClane and Kevin, when they're in the situation that they're in, they call for help.
Yes.
And guess what happens?
Nothing.
The police are fucking useless.
Yeah.
They're like bureaucratic. They're he gets passed from pillar to post. They don't take him very seriously. And eventually they send a lazy beat cop to kind of half-heartedly check it out.
But by the way, you're even missing one more element there, the donuts.
The donut.
You got our cop eating a donut, and we meet Al Powell getting the donuts at the 7-Eleven. Or Twinkies, sorry.
I would like to throw out a quick award to that donut for being the most delicious-looking donut I've ever seen. Every time I watch it, I'm like,
phone
I
as well.
Want a donut. Incredible.
It really is a good. Another small comparison. This is probably too small to reference, but I'll do it. So when we first bump into Die Hard, they get into the building and they're talking about the Laker game. He shoots, go magic to Kareem. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Michael Jordan in this movie. So, that's an LA movie talking about LA NBA, Chicago movie talking about Chicago NBA. There also is a basketball clearly in shot that says Skyhook, which I also think is a Kareem thing too. So we got our basketball. We got, so we have an homage. I
think
to
there's
Kareem.
an Isaiah Thomas thing in the background too at one point.
So, that,
Playboy Dirty Magazine.
Yes.
So when McClane famously, one of my favorite moments, in like, "Girls," as he runs by. And then Home Alone, Kevin finding the Home Alone, no clothes on anyone's disgusting. I also think that the "now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho" moment when he's wearing the shirt is equivalent to when Kevin sets up all the statues and marquees. Like, it's kind of like this is the first time that in the case of Die Hard, they know we're dealing with a formidable foe. In Home Alone, they're completely tricked by it, and he buys himself more time. And that's part of what's so great about this movie. One of the things that we talked about when we did Die Hard a year ago is that McClane is always on the run, right? He's a survival. Right. It's all survival for him. And once Kevin knows like something is up, he's just trying to delay the inevitable. And in the delaying of the inevitable, he has to come to terms with his like own mistakes with his mother in the way that McClane has to come to terms with the mistakes with his wife. Like there's something about the redemptive Christmas story that like is culturally significant that they fit into both these movies in like a really interesting way.
I agree, and I'm pulling at some real small threads here, but I want to just go back to the Playboy for a second and say that, there's a great moment in Die Hard where the picture frame is turned around, right? Mm-hmm. Like and look, the same thing when he sees Buzz's girlfriend, like, ugh, like, oh, she, and it's like, like there's these little, like, now look, there's going to be, there are only two criminals in this movie, right? So you're going to be like, well, how do you pull that all together? And I would say that because this movie is a cartoon, we talked about this idea of like the action here is very much like a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote film or a short. I would say that Harry and Marv serve to be all the people that McClane dispatches, because he can't kill everybody. Right. Like he doesn't, but there are little moments in which he does dispatch. You could make an argument that the supermarket checkout person and the
cop
pizza
who
delivery
chases
guy.
him across the ice.
I was going to say the pizza delivery guy who he tricks into being killed or runs out with the tip. Those could be like little mini kills. Like Kevin gets one up on adults, and I would say McClane gets one up on these terrorists by killing them. But yes, he gets away from the cop on the ice. He gets the pizza delivered. He gets out of the supermarket without an issue. And the closest that he gets to being caught is like a little moment in the beginning of Die Hard when he's first on the run, is the toothbrush moment. We don't have, I feel like there's like a little, okay, we don't know what we're dealing with. Now he does. Now he gets what he's dealing with. It's unfortunate because Marley, but, Reginald Vell Johnson is kind of, they're a little bit at odds in the beginning, right? A little bit like, they don't automatically bond. So I would buy that as part of the Marley storyline.
They also don't make assumptions about each other. They make assumptions about each other.
They have to learn
who's
to trust
driving
each
this guy,
other,
Stevie's car? Who's driving this car, Stevie Wonder versus like Buzz being like, he murdered his whole family.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, that's another Christmas thematic idea, is the idea that like, judge not lest you be judged, right? If you want to think about it in those terms, like they have, as Phil, you were saying, they have to come to terms with each other, right? Like that's a big part of what it is.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more. I'd like to drill down a little bit more on our two heroes. But before we do, let's take a very quick break, and then we'll be back with Anatomy of a Christmas action movie.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
Welcome back. We're now into our main section of the show, which is the anatomy of a Christmas action movie, where we list the tenets.
We live in a Christmas world.
Yes.
there are no threats on Christmas Eve. I don't know.
It's as close as we can get. Leave us alone.
We did a whole tenet thing. You know about it, Paul. We talked about it with you. It's a whole thing. It's a whole.
To me,
albatross.
look. I mean, the premise. The premise of this movie is don't go to France. I think honestly, bad things happen if you go to France.
And if you send your son to don't spill milk all over the tickets and pizza, right? The night before the flight.
Yeah.
That gets you banished to the attic.
So the premise of this film is, everybody knows it, but just real quick, just to lay the table. After an unfortunate mix-up leads to an 8-year-old boy named Kevin McAllister being left home alone while his family are on vacation, Kevin must learn to fend for himself and defend the house from two determined and persistent burglars who call themselves the Wet Bandits. Now, as we as you were sort of saying, like one of the things I think is so amazing about this film, first of all, the fact that they make an outlandish, outrageous premise. You forgot one of your kids, really kind of believable.
Oh,
in the way that
they
it's done.
ground that is perfect. It really is. Like, I watch that and it's the counting, the other kid
love that
looks
kid.
like him. I love that kid. It's a great. It's also the rush of the morning. There's so many elements there because you need to buy that a family could forget one of their kids. But in a mad dash to an airport, I have 2 kids, and there are moments where you're just booking it, and I buy that melee. Everyone thinks someone else has got that kid. It's like your guard is slightly down because there's so many people to look after the whole unit.
But the other part of it, that's obviously the central premise of the film and the hook of it and the title and everything, right? Like a great conceit. But as you were just sort of alluding to, this film is like there's so many dimensions to it because it's a heist movie, a siege movie, a home invasion movie, a coming of age movie. To some extent, is more like coming of age as a younger person than usually that's like teenage years. But he learns to fend for himself. He learns to be.
It's a big thematic idea in the movie. Absolutely.
Well,
I mean, the other thing I would say about this movie that people often don't talk about, and I think it's a small detail, but it's worthy of mentioning, it's a wish movie. Right?
Yes,
because he makes a wish and something happens. Like when he says that, there is a moment of like a lightning crack. There's like it's a magical moment why they oversleep.
I think there's a shot of the moon or something.
Yes, there's
just sort of punctuates it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
subtly.
Like something happens in that moment that's not like that's supernatural in a way. Like it, and I feel like it's a small detail, but it's definitely there. I mean, it's like it knocks out the phone lines, which also gives you another beautiful way not to get in touch with him. I mean, that idea, like, my bell's gonna have to take a couple days with this. I was like,
so
great,
smart.
like great, and it's only 2 days. Like, I mean, it really is only 2 days. It does feel longer. I think it's like because it's like right because she says she couldn't get a direct flight for 2 days. And then she does get standby on that same day and then is driven by John Candy. So I think all in all, it's just 2 days, although the movie feels like it takes place over
like
a
week.
larger course. Yeah, but it's only 2 days, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that stuff out too. Well, I have a question about this, but what I think we should also just say is in terms of making sure that the obvious point has been made about the connection to Die Hard is that this is a movie about characters pulling a heist, and it's mainly centered around one location, right? As you already kind of alluded to earlier to some extent, but so on that level alone, it is very much like that's a clear corollary.
Yes, I mean 100%. It's like that is it. It's the big tuna. It's the bearer bonds. It's DVD players replace bearer
They
bonds.
even say I think Pesci says like odd marketable securities, which sounds very bearer bond-esque when they're like planning the heist.
I love how he says that with this. He's like odd marketable, like he's eating them. Like it's just so good. Right.
640 million. But fundamentally as well, it's a holiday movie, it's a Christmas movie, it's a family movie. And I was just thinking about how John Hughes, we're at this time of year where we're hopefully, you're home with your families, you're enjoying the holidays, and the John Hughes movies are kind of ubiquitous, right? Like, and we were just come out of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for Thanksgiving, which is sort of very closely, indelibly associated with that holiday. At this point now, we have Home Alone and we have Christmas Vacation and all of these movies. What is it that makes John Hughes movies so special and so timeless?
I thought a lot about this, and there's something about John Hughes that captures the American experience of being an outsider and wanting to be in. I mean, that's a lot of the teen movies are that, right? Kevin's also an outsider in this movie a little bit, but also he's a brilliant observer of humans and parents. It's like these are not archetypes. This is not like the asshole dad, the busy dad. Like they feel rich and lived in. And, even when you're talking about something like The Breakfast Club, which are like the nerd, the jock, the premise of that movie is we are beyond our labels. We are more than this. And I think that is ultimately at the core of John Hughes movies. I think that's why all of his movies feel incredibly special because they are we see ourselves in them. You know, I think that as an adult, I see myself sometimes as Del Griffith and as Steve Martin's character, Neil.
That's such a fascinating take, Paul.
Yeah,
like, I love this.
I think he invented the archetypes that we go by now to some extent, like the nerd, the jock. Like
it trades in archetypes, but then peels back the onion, so to speak, to reveal the humanity underneath. I love that take. That's like really, really.
It's also quintessentially American in the way that if you grow up here, I think Chicago suburbs, that represented something in the late 80s, early 90s, whether it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, whatever. Like,
well, I think because of him.
I agree.
I think that he created this idea of Chicago. Like, Chicago is a suburb with a city.
Right.
And so most people, or a majority of people watching movies, I would imagine, live in a suburb.
Right.
You know, and it's like the city is close, but it's not right there. And I felt like it was like, you know, this movie never goes to the city, but we feel that energy. And I think it's sort of like to go one step further with like peeling back the layers of the onion, we all want people to see us for who we are, who we really are. And I feel like that's kind of at the core of this. Like, we can forget those in moments. Like, Kevin forgets who he is, tells his mother she's like terrible and doesn't want to be with her, but that's not who he is, right? Like, he actually loves his family. He wants to be home with his family. You know, it's like they're like these, you know, I think Steve Martin gets so caught up with just getting home, he forgets to be a human, right? And then like, he has to get back to it. Like, and I feel like we all have had that. It's perfect for Christmas movies too. It's like, no, we are more than our job. We are more than our thing. We are more than our, you know,
and more than our mistakes.
Yes,
as well.
Yes,
which goes back to George Bailey, right? Like, it goes back to It's a Wonderful Life. I also very quickly, you know, you're talking about Chicago. I want to mention the actual like great Chicago, movie, suburb going to the movies, which is Adventures in Babysitting, right? Which is the great movie about how like my little suburban community is safe and the city is this like scary nightmare, right? And that's a Chris Columbus movie. So this was like floating in the air then, right? Like, Chicago had this weird grip on American suburb movie culture.
It's like right in the middle as well, right? Like, it's like the middle. It's almost like every American, every city to some extent,
right,
even though there is a cultural specificity.
New York is
Chicago.
too harsh.
Yep.
Yes.
Right? Chicago is more like, oh, we work in Chicago and we live in the suburbs.
It's more relatable. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a universality to it, right?
I want to go one more step further on John Hughes too, which is what may make his films incredibly universal is at the core of a lot of them is family. Right. So you can say, like, even though they're not present, family are the bookends of Breakfast Club. Family is obviously a part of this movie in a big way. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, they're like, the parents are trying to do the right thing. And I think it's like this idea too of like 80s parents or parents in general, like National Lampoon's Vacation. It's like, we're trying to do the right thing. We want to plan a vacation. We want to get the right car. And it's like, and in the want and attempt to do things right, you also fuck up things as well. You make mistakes. You goof. Yeah, parenting. It's parenting, right? And I think that that's why, as adults, as three adults here that are watching Home Alone, we're all going like, I love this movie because now I'm relating with the parents. I'm also seeing, it's like there's a forgiveness to all of this. Like, Kevin's parents are not bad. Ferris Bueller's parents are not bad. They're smarter. They're trying. They don't always succeed.
It's a flawed humanity to
it,
right? That I think leaves us feeling better about ourselves when we watch it, when you go through this experience, because you're like, oh, this character has failed or made a mistake or screwed something up, but their heart is usually in the right place. There's usually, these films aren't full of like, even Harry and Marv in this there's a sort of softness and vulnerability to them, even though they're bad people.
Well, it's like, it's interesting because as much as you think they're going to kill Kevin, they're mad, right? They keep on getting hurt and getting mad, but their really thing isn't like, they're not like, oh, we want to kill this kid, right? They're not, but they're like, it's almost like they got slapped in the face so many times. They're like, okay, all right, now I'm going to beat the shit out of this kid. Like, but there is this element where they're pushed to the brink. And I do even like that idea too, where, the dumbness of like, where the Wet Bandits, like, they create more destruction than they ever needed to create. It's such a sad, like dumb
leaving
thing.
the
It's like,
sinks on. It's so like, it's just foul. It's foul and terrible.
It's foul.
Well, why don't we just talk about that? We'll go slightly out of order, but while we're on the subject, let's talk about the villains, and then we'll move on to our other section. Because I did have a question about that as we're into it, which is, who is the worst of of the two? Who's worse, Harry or Marv?
Wow.
Marv is a blunt instrument that is used by Harry.
Yeah.
Like Harry is, Marv is the gun. Harry is the person holding the gun. It's like, you go check it out.
Hans and Carl a little
Hans
bit.
and everybody else, actually.
Yeah,
I think Hans and like almost everybody else in that room. He's like they're the henchmen.
He weaponizes these people for his purpose, which is stealing.
It's Harry's plan. It's his idea. He is the mastermind. He is the person who is smart enough. Again, like the way that Hans says, when they're trying to figure out how to open the vault. Well, we can't open the vault. He's like, and he knows that when they shut down the electricity, they'll be able to get in. In this moment, he knows, okay, at 6:21, that light's going to go on. At 6:25, that light's going to go on. Like, he knows he's got the rhythm of the whole street. Like, he's got it all figured out.
No, well, it's true because the same kind of like professionalism goes on, right? And like, there's a little bit in remember the moment in Die Hard when, remind me, Phil, because you are the expert, who makes the bets? Who is the one who's like, it's
Theo
and Carl have this moment where they're like,
yes.
I told you. And then like one of them slips the other a 20 after Hans blows away Takagi.
Whether they're going to kill
And Hans
Takagi,
gives them a look that's like, hey,
or whether
we're professionals here, right? And that's kind of true with Harry when he's like, why are you blocking the sinks? Why are you doing this? Like, that's sick, right? Like he feigns a kind of professionalism despite doing like, being a thief and being a crook and like not being a great guy, right? Like he has this layer of decency, which is why I think he's the better of the two.
Well, I also think that isn't there a moment, like, I think that you're to believe and that Hans is a good guy. Like, he wouldn't have killed Takagi. But we also understand, as the movie goes on, the plan all along was to blow up everybody on that roof and escape, right? Like, the plan was to create this mass destruction and death. Like, that was,
Good
that
point.
was, and I think that there is something about this, and maybe we could go back to that idea of like, well, maybe that idea to kill Kevin is like part of it. It's like, well, yeah, we don't know that that's part of it, but maybe in the back of his mind, he's never going to tell Marv, we're going to kill this kid. But he knows, we're going to kill this kid. Like, like maybe, he doesn't ever reveal it, but maybe that's me in his mind. He's like, well, if it comes down to it, we're going to have to kill this kid.
Well, and especially because the house is the big kahuna. It's like the tuna.
Yeah.
It's the one that he wants the most, right? And like at that point, he's so like filled with rage that he has no other choice. Like, I don't think in the same way that it doesn't go the way Hans wants it to go, it doesn't go the way that Harry wants it to go.
Right.
Well, let's talk about our hero, Kevin McAllister, because I think he is a very McClane-like character in his own way. Also, because he spends a lot of the movie alone, doing monologues and soliloquies, right? Like, he's talking to himself a lot. You forget sometimes that what this must have been like for the actor on set, for Bruce Willis, for like the first 30 minutes or so of the movie. He's running around just saying shit out loud as he's trying to process what's happening. And Kevin kind of does the same thing. And of course, he's also... he's very ingenious. There's a sort of indefatigability about him as well that I think is similar. What is it about this character in your minds of Kevin McAllister that makes him such a... Why did he become such an icon? Why is he such a compelling, rootable hero? And this is a kid who had really just done Uncle Buck. What is it about him that just captured the world's imagination?
It's the same thing that captured the world's imagination about John McClane. Like, John McClane is he's an everyman, right? He's put in an extreme situation and he steps up to the plate. He's not Schwarzenegger. He's not Stallone in the world of like action movies. Like, he's not the guy who's like, I'll take down 15 guys. Like, like you would believe there's a world in which he's never fired his gun at anyone, as a cop. Like, that's not established that he is a killer. And I think Kevin's the same way. This is an everyman. He's a kid. He's just like me. He's home alone. He's not super smart. He's having fun. He likes ice cream. He got into trouble with his mom. And the way he defends his house isn't because he's the smartest kid on the block. It's not because he knows math. It's not because he he's just like, oh, I'm gonna use everything at my disposal to save the day. The same way John McClane's like, I'm gonna use everything that I know to do this. Whether it's like tying, he ties the fire hose around his waist and jumps up the building to save himself. It's like, he didn't, he's never done that before. Kevin's never done any of this stuff before, but he's
much like the treehouse sequence, right? Like the treehouse sequence is
right, exactly.
Absolutely.
I think they're both resourceful and they have cunning, and they only figure it out maybe under the stress that they're in, right? With the exception of like they kind of figure out who they are when the brake hits the metal or whatever that expression is. Also, they both screw up. That's very relatable. People who screw up at Christmas, that's a time-honored tradition in American movie history, whether it's George Bailey or anybody you can lean back to, right? They're looking to redeem themselves. And I think that makes a character really, it makes us root for them, right? Whether it's, McClane or it's Kevin or it's George Bailey or it's Martin Riggs and Lethal Weapon, like they're recovering from something.
right.
Yeah, and as you said, as you were sort of touching on earlier, when they start the movie, they both have this sort of the most important relationship in Kevin's life is with his mum, and the most important relationship in John McClane's life is with his wife Holly, right? And their relationships are both fractured at the beginning because of their behavior. Kevin is not great at the beginning of the movie. He's kind of like whiny, bratty, difficult. He's bugging her when she's on the phone. He's being rude. He's just not. He's not doing anything that a kid wouldn't do. It's perfectly normal behavior, but it's also not like he's not like an angel.
There's a little bit of cruelty at the beginning of this movie. The beginning of this movie is cruel. Like my wife was watching with me, and she was like, "Everyone kind of sucks at the beginning of this movie." Now, it's relatable, but it's like, I thought there's a little bit of you, if you haven't seen it in a while, you're like, thought this was a Christmas movie. Everyone's being so mean. And then you realize families together in a house at Christmas can get hairy.
Under stress.
It can get hairy.
Yeah. And then there's a travel component to it, which is another stressor.
Yeah.
So, well, I want to talk about the, the lady of this picture, about Kevin's mom, Kate McAllister, played by the wonderful Catherine
So good.
O'Hara.
She's so good in this movie.
She's kind of the protagonist of her own odyssey in this movie. And to your point earlier, Paul, I was thinking, what I love about this is like, is she a bad mother, or is she a brilliant parent? She's kind of both. And that's what parenting is, right? To some extent. Like,
I think the moment that solves or that tells you everything you need to know about her is the moment where the father, who I also think is a good dad, says, look, there's nothing more we can do in this airport. Let's go home. We'll make a phone call. We'll figure it out there. And she's like, I'm not leaving this airport. That to me is the moment where she's like, she's showing you I'm a good mom. Like, we fucked up. Like, she takes it on herself. She doesn't blame anyone. I mean, really, they should be blaming the older sister. She did the head count. Also, I love that line in Home Alone, which is so funny, where they say, okay, get on in there, just take whatever seat you want. I'm like, when was air travel ever like that?
Oh my God.
Take whatever,
that chill,
whatever coach seat you want. Sure. It's like, what,
that would really
Southwest?
Fly now. They love that.
Yeah.
They love that. Yeah. When you get on a plane now, when you just take whatever
seat you want.
Right.
But I think that's the moment. And then obviously when she gets in the thing with John Candy, but she does everything. She is resourceful like Kevin. You get where he gets his resourcefulness from. Like, she's trading her earrings and her watches, and she's manipulating people to get back home. Same way that Holly Gennaro manipulates Hans to get in his good graces until he finds out that they are together, right? Like, that's when he's like, oh, right.
Similarly, they shed their material wealth, right? Much like Holly sheds the Rolex, which is so tied up in symbolism of a kind of gross, grasping capitalistic impulses. Kate sheds, as you just said, sheds her watch, her earrings. It's like basically wealth doesn't matter when push comes to shove. What comes to matter is what's really important is the people I love, my family. So that's an interesting.
Not to mention that she has a redemption arc. The movie doesn't really, the tension in the movie doesn't resolve until she says, Kevin, I'm sorry. And he runs to her, right? Which is such like a wonderful parent moment, because anytime you screw up with your kids, like, they're waiting for that a little bit. And it's very touching. It's very moving that at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Oh, Kevin,
you don't see it too often, because I feel like it's hard to say to your child, hey, I screwed up, I'm sorry. Because often it's the expectation is we're modeling how things should be. So to admit like, oh yeah, I really messed up with that. I love that moment because, as you just said, I'm really seeing a whole of John Hughes' filmography through a whole nother lens after what you were saying, Paul, about like how he takes archetypes and then humanizes them, and it makes it just so much more like relatable and kind of
and I that apology to a child is very progressive for 1990. And I'd also argue, there's a part of this, like if Kevin just played ball and was okay with Kieran Culkin, and just like wasn't such, not a spoiled brat, but just got on with his family a little bit. He's also at fault. Like he was put up to the attic and then they was like, I don't want to be with anyone. I want to be alone. And all these things are like, it's not saying he deserved to be left home alone, but he also was a part of the reason why he was left home alone. He screwed up and he's responsible. He's responsible to a certain extent, which I think,
and he's a real person, right?
Yes.
In the way that kids are annoying. Like, they're annoying sometimes, right? It's just part of it. Like, doesn't mean, you love a kid less or whatever, but I'm finding it as a parent watching movies now and seeing that when the kids are actually, Joseph Mazzello in The River Wild, he's very intense, right? Which is a movie we just talked about. Kevin in this, like, they're irritating, right? They need something, and it's hard to take sometimes. And like, you want to be like, go to your room, get away from me. It's hard. And then, but the great thing about that is that they let that be real. You know?
Absolutely.
Well, I want to move on to our next section, but before I do, I want to ask each of you guys, just to cover the action real quick, do you each have a favorite booby trap?
The handle on fire is the most painful one, and I think that is
very much a Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The reference to Fritz Lang's M, I believe, right? Yeah.
Wait, reference to what?
Fritz Lang's M, isn't it? That's why it's an M.
Oh my God. Listen, pause. This is the only podcast where you can get a Fritz Lang reference in a podcast about Die Hard. We're talking about Home Alone. That's what I love. Yeah, Fritz Lang. And Paul, you just said Raiders, right?
I mean, that's what I thought of, but that's definitely the dumber version of what you just said. So I'm going to...
Everyone watch M right after Home Alone. They're a great double feature. Go for it.
Christmas double bill. Did you have a favorite?
I think that, there are great moments in this movie. We actually did an episode of Black Monday. I think it was the second to last episode in our third season, where we are in a cabin in the woods and we're being stalked. We're being killed. Where somebody's trying to kill us. And Regina it's such a weird, we had to like mess the timeline up a little bit. Like she had gotten the script for Home Alone and she had read it. And so we start using all of Kevin's booby traps in, she's like, oh, I remember in this script that I read for this movie that's coming out, Home Alone, he did this and this. And then we try to like recreate some Home Alone traps in the thing.
Oh my goodness. I gotta watch that.
It's a really fun, dumb thing.
But talk about the ubiquity of this movie in culture. This is a movie that would hold up to that. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
I think the things that I like about this movie are the things that are accessible and make me feel pain. Whether it's the ice on the stairwell, like wetting down the stairs is such a simple thing. And when Marv takes that flip down, like when he had that one slip and he goes down on the back of his head, you're like, oh, that hurts. The foot on the shards of the glass, like those are the things that make me go, oof. Sometimes it's like, yes, a can to the head is powerful and whatever, but man, it's those the shards of glass.
It's like the paper cut is worse than getting your head.
Right. Or the micro machines. If you're a parent, you've stepped on a sharp plastic kid's toy. It's like awful. It's so painful.
But obviously the bare feet with the Christmas ornaments to me was straight up shoot the glass moment, right? Like that was another corollary right there. All right, guys. Well, let's take off our ugly Christmas sweaters and put on our tuxedo.
I'm leaving my ugly sweater on over my tuxedo. Sorry, that's just what I'm doing.
The Die Hard Oscars, aka the Xmas Action Movie Awards. So I have our first category here is the John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line. There are a few zingers here. I've picked three. Feel free to add. Kate's line, I don't care if I have to get out on your runway and hitchhike, if it costs me everything I own, if I have to sell my soul to the devil himself, I'm going to get home to my
Good line.
son. I also was really quite touched with Marley's line where he says, you can be too old for a lot of things, but you're never too old to be afraid.
Oh, I love that.
Which I also thought was kind of deep and touching.
That actor is great.
Of course, Oh, he's wonderful, and we're going to come to him in a second. But there's one, of course, that is the yippee-ki-yay literal catchphrase equivalent from the classic movie Angels with Filthy Souls. I don't know if you feel like saying it, Paul, but I feel like as you're a professional actor, you would do it a lot better than me.
I think it's the right line we're thinking about, right? It's about money, right? That line. Yes. Okay, great. So it would be
yes, exactly.
Keep the change, you filthy animal. I mean, it's a great line.
See,
by the way,
so much
I did not know that was a fake movie until many years later.
Me too.
Yeah,
same.
I
only
that was
found
a real
out,
movie.
Yeah, I thought because it feels
I
like
feel
a real
that
movie.
should be played by Robert Prosky, like the guy who's like, for some reason, like, why isn't Robert Prosky in this movie? He feels like by osmosis somehow he should be in that. He should be playing that part. Although the actor is
Quick
great.
shout out to for the kids. When he says for the kids when she sees the magazine or the army men. I just think
little
that's
toy
a great
soldiers.
line.
Well, I will also say too, what's kind of great about that moment. I just want to talk about Home Alone for 1 second. Say the idea that he puts in that as the dirty movie that he wants to watch, or the adult movie, makes this movie more timeless. If he put in like Rambo or something like that, which would probably be more akin to what that kid would want to be watching, not an old black and white movie. Like,
Yeah.
It actually keeps the movie a little bit more timeless. A black and white movie, it's an odd choice,
Such a smart
in the
choice.
grand scheme of things, because you would go right to an R movie. That's like a 1940s, film noir. Like,
It's like a John Huston.
Yeah,
movie or
yeah.
something
It's a
like that.
Cagney type
Cagney's
riff,
much better.
right?
Yeah. That is so funny.
Okay. Well, for me, that's the clear winner.
Yeah,
that's such
keep
a
the
memorable
change, you
line. And
filthy
it also, there's some just literally saying it makes you feel like 15%.
oh, I love it. I mean, yeah.
To change it.
You know?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's move on to the Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film. And I have 3 nominees for you guys. The aforementioned Roberts Blossom as Marley, who I think delivers a wonderful performance. Kieran Culkin in his largely silent but very effective role as Fuller.
I wish he had one line. It
but
was
for
fuck
me-
off. I just wish he'd said that once in the movie. In the movie, that would be great.
In reference to the show,
Yes,
right?
to Succession. Yes, exactly.
Just in case anyone was confused.
exactly.
But for me, there's only one winner, which is John Candy as Gus Polinski,
Yes.
the Polka King of the Midwest.
Yeah, over.
I mean,
Amazing.
can we talk about him for
Sure.
a second? Because he's like, I love this movie, but he's my favorite part of this whole film. As he is in pretty much every film that he's in. And he means so much to me.
A lot
and
of
my
heart
family.
in that guy. A lot of heart. The best.
Just wonderful. And apparently that was all improvised. He was paid $414 for 23 hours of work in one day.
Yes.
It was all a favor to John Hughes. I mean, what do you make of? I mean, you're highly skilled in the improvisational world, Paul. What's your take on like that performance? The fact that it was all pretty.
I mean,
much
John Candy
built
to
out
me
of it.
is truly one of those actors who could do it all that we sometimes did not allow him to do it all. And I think sometimes when he was not calibrated correctly, he did too much of one thing and not enough of the other. Right. And I think John Hughes calibrated him great. Uncle Buck is an amazing performance of like empathy and funny, and like the scene where he goes to like stop his goddaughter from essentially, being like date raped is like an amazing section of the film, and here he gets to do it all. Super funny character. You meet him, you love him. He's also John Candy. He's a great cameo. And then, they're playing the instrument and he has this like little moment with her. Like it just get like in this little section, you get every flavor of John Candy, and you're just like, God damn, this guy's, he's just a hero. He's just like, and that to me it's a perfect John Candy performance. I know it was like a stressful day for them. Although I look at that and I'm like, I shoot 12 pages a day sometimes. Like, why is that so hard? They really shot in 2 locations. One, 2 people standing, talking to each other, and the other on a truck sitting next to each other. It's not like, oh my God, all the coverage. It wasn't like they shot like an action sequence. Like it was like they shot 2 dialogue scenes. It's like
such an interesting distillation of how production has changed.
Yeah, I know.
Paul, like the way you put it that way. Like the 12 days was like, those many pages, but you're like, I can like, you nail 13 pages in a day.
Yeah,
or
just
whatever.
like that. That to me, it's like him complaining about 2 scenes of 2-person dialogue scenes. It's like, God bless you. I mean, you could shoot that before lunch. Like, we're in, and by the way, both interior sets, Like, it's like it's not too complex.
Yeah, no.
Oh, by the way, I don't think and if I gave the impression that there was any complaints about it, I don't think there was.
No.
I certainly didn't read that.
He has complained about it. John Candy, like, oh yeah, there's always a really stressful day. I've read a lot about this. It complains about how much of it was. And I was like, what are you complaining? Like, literally, it's a nothing. Like, these scenes are great, but maybe it was a lot of extra dialogue. I don't know. Maybe it was whatever. Like.
Well, he's so soulful, you'd never know. That's the thing that's beautiful about
just
it.
the second he shows up, you're just like, I don't know, he's got that rare gift. And I'd say you have this too, Paul, where you just literally see them.
You're lovely to say that, but I also think that he's like one of those guys that's like, he is Midwest. We talked about Chicago representing something.
Yes.
He is the most affable, lovable guy. And he, And I think that like where Macaulay Culkin broke out was because of Uncle Buck. I think that that's probably one of John Candy's best roles, and he's does some other great performances, but that is truly the best. And, we've really missed out on the A24 John Candy. Like what we've gotten from Bill Murray with Broken Flowers and Lost in Translation. Yeah. Like I would have loved to have that John Candy, like the younger directors who got to put him in something and reinvent John Candy.
Or Sandler, the way it happens with Sandler.
1 million.
Yeah, like because John Candy's Uncut
his
Gems.
dramatic work in Planes, Trains,
amazing.
And at the end.
I mean, that might be the best John Candy. Yeah, it's so hard, but it's like, he's
incredible in that.
Oh, just love him to death. Just love him so much. All right, let's move on to the our final award this week, which is the Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie. I've got 4 noms. Joe Pesci as Harry, Daniel Stern as Marv, Devin Ratray as Buzz, and Jerry Baman as Uncle Frank. Who are you picking, guys?
I'm going to jump in immediately, and I'm so happy that you expanded this a little bit. Uncle Frank is the dick of the movie. Uncle Frank is truly like he represents, and I think what I love about Uncle Frank is we talked about revealing humanity and stuff like that. Uncle Frank is the one asshole in this entire movie that's the most irredeemable. Like when he's so excited about the cocktail Franks in France, like there's a child missing. Like he is stealing things from the airplane. He's not like chipping in. Put him in your purse. Like he has traveler's checks, which you could pay for pizza. Traveler's checks is cash. Like he does everything. He is the biggest asshole, the biggest dick. He is Dick Thornburg, 100%. And I'm so sorry we didn't talk about that earlier. Yes. And that's the other. He
is Dick Thornburg. That's really good. That is really good. I agree. I want to say very quickly, you mentioned John Candy not having his A24 period. Devin Ratray has become this incredibly interesting actor. He's in Soderbergh series. He's in that show Full Circle that came out. And he's in a movie called Blue Ruin, Macon Blair's directorial debut, which I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it is. Phil, if you haven't seen that, Macon Blair's film Blue Ruin, incredible. And Ratray is scuzzy and just like, he's so good in it. He's such a good actor.
I feel that Buzz has a redemptive moment which takes him off the hook,
right?
Whereas Uncle Frank doesn't, right? Buzz, by the end, he kind of says, it's pretty cool you didn't burn the house
and
down.
And Buzz, I also love that moment too about the whole movie. It's like the mom did all of that to get back at the same exact time as the family. And that's a beautiful thing too. Like the whole family came back, right? The whole family came back, and it wasn't just like the mom. It was like, and I love that idea that they were all of them. The dad is not a bad dad by saying, "Let's go back home." He's like, "Let's go do it this way," and it worked out. It worked out the same. But it's like I know if I was in that situation with my wife, we might have taken that same exact thing, and like no one's right or wrong. It just is like, but the mom can't sit still. And the dad's like, we can logic. It was Spock and Kirk, it's like that kind of.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. There's always the one parent who can't. There's like the alpha parent and the beta parent a little bit, to make it simple.
And look, Buzz loves his brother. I mean, like as much as, and I think that there's like these moments and stuff like that. And I feel like, look, they're always going to be at each other's throats. And I feel like, like with Ellis, like I think that Ellis doesn't hate John, but he thinks he's smarter than John or he can like buddy him up. So if we use that example of like, is Buzz Ellis, there's a similarity there because like I'm the older guy, I'm the older brother. I know what's going on. You get out of here. You don't belong in my room. Yeah, you're out of your depth. I got it. I got it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I can handle this Eurotrash. Well, let's we're going to take a very quick break and then we're going to be back for our final section of the show, which is a special Christmas edition of the Double Jeopardy Trivia Quiz. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back. We are here for our final section of the show, which is the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz, where the scores can really change. It's going to be 3 quiz questions. And as it's Christmas, collaboration is mandatory because this is the time for goodwill to all. Sometimes we have you guys compete, but today you guys are going to work together. As there's going to be 3 questions.
We did really well together last time, so I feel good about this.
You did. So I want to keep that energy going. Question number 1. Which legendary SNL performer auditioned for the role of Santa Claus in the film, but apparently blew the audition, having turned up a little worse for wear?
Oh, interesting. All right, so this is 1990, right?
So my first thought would have been, Belushi, but no, right?
I mean,
So
I'm going to say it's Chris Farley.
Is the right answer.
Because, it was. Oh, okay, great. Oh, great. Okay, great.
Yeah, it was Chris Farley. The part was eventually played by Ken Hudson Campbell, whom you may recognize as the friendly man in the corridor of the motel that Bill Murray keeps running into in Groundhog Day. Oh, you have to see the warthog.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
The Groundhog,
what a type that guy was. Oh, great.
Chris Farley would, of course, go on to appear as an enthusiastic beat cop in Airheads, a.k.a. Die Hard in a Radio Station.
There it is.
Right.
Question number 2. Which member of the Die Hard cast is actually related to Macaulay Culkin?
Oh, Holly Gennaro. Bonnie Bedelia.
Oh, wow.
That is correct.
That.
She's his aunt or his godmother.
That's right.
One of those two.
Wow.
She is Culkin's aunt. Bonnie Bedelia has 2 brothers, one of whom is actor Kit Culkin and a sister Candice Culkin, and she's the aunt of actors Macaulay, Kieran, and Rory Culkin. So, fun fact. All right, this is our last.
Doing great.
You are. You're
Paul,
killing
we're
it,
doing
guys.
great.
We're doing good.
It's time for everyone's favorite section of the show, Convoluted Corner.
Christmas edition.
I'm really psyched about this one, I have to say. Okay, here we go. Let's see if you can get 3. Joe Pesci plays the character of Harry in Home Alone. Which memorable Die Hard character is also named Harry, but is referred to by his surname throughout?
Ooh.
Can you tell me the surname? Is it come up a lot? And can we call Al?
You can call out. You can phone
Let's
a friend.
call Al.
You can
It's a
call
tough
Al
one.
Powell. You can radio Al Powell for a clue.
I mean, I'm going to say it's Hans. I mean, my gut would be it's Hans Gruber, right? But like they would call, but no, but maybe
Harry. Did they say it at least once in the movie?
I don't think it ever gets said.
Okay.
Maybe.
But I can.
Okay.
I think I understand who. All right, because it has to be a main character, right?
It's a memorable character.
Okay. Okay, we've been talking about this character, I believe, a lot throughout the film. Some character we've only referred to by their last name multiple times. We think it might be his first name. It's not Ellis. It's Harry Ellis.
That is the right answer. It's Harry Ellis.
Paul.
Nailed it.
I had a little gut that Ellis is a good last name.
Incredible. Christmas miracle. You pulled that out. Amazing.
And snow falls from the sky here at Die Hard on the Blank Towers.
Incredible.
In Century City. That's it, folks. Well done. Congratulations. Paul.
Wait, I have one quick question for Paul.
Yeah.
Paul, is there a part, and we asked you this with Clear and Present Danger, and I loved your answer.
this.
Is there a part in this movie that you'd want to play?
Oh, well, this is a great one. I mean, look, what I would love to play, I thought about this in watching it, and I'm like, there's the Well, look, I'll take your compliment and say the John Candy role because only 1 day of shooting, and I got a lot of stuff to do. But
and a measly 12 pages. So you.
I think I would love to play the Marv part.
Yes.
And the Marv part is really fun.
Yeah.
It's just really fun. And it's like you get to play stupid, you get to play, you get to do some fun stuff. His physical comedy is so great. When Marv reacts to the gunshots, I rewound that twice. Like the way he falls over those trash cans is so good.
Great
and here's
scream.
His scream is an all-timer.
Oh, his scream! There's a great thing that they said that if you were born in 1990 or later, you are older than Marv right now. So, the idea that
I looked this up.
Oh,
I looked this up
yeah.
because I was,
That
as I
twists
do
my
now, because
melon.
I turned 41
Yeah.
today. I'll be watching movies and I'll look it up. The other day I was watching Leave the World Behind and I discovered that I'm only 6 years younger than Mahershala, and I was like, oh God, what am I doing? But he was 37 when they shot, or 36 when they
Yeah.
shot
It's
this
Weird.
movie.
I feel like people
Kinda
looked older. People just looked older.
They looked older.
I feel like.
It was men's fashion. I think about this all the time. Men just dress.
hairstyle
I
and
mean,
men
look at me.
fashion.
I'm 41. I have like a hardcore.
You look
hat
great.
on.
You look great, and I'm so happy that we get to be here on your birthday.
I'm very happy. This has been great. Paul, thank you so much for doing this. This is like wildest dreams. This is the 1-year anniversary of this show. We can't imagine having a better guest to join us.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I will say that, an interesting thing, I have a book coming out in May, which you can pre-order right now, wherever you get your books. All the places have it. But I have a whole chapter about Home Alone in my
Oh,
book.
wonderful.
Because I was actually left home alone, and I had an attacker try to break into our house. So the chapter is called Kevin McAllister's Got Nothing on Me. And it's this pretty scary story about how someone tried to break into my house when I was home alone during summer break.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Long Island.
Oh, okay. You grew up in Long Island.
So there you go. That's a little
I'm going to
tease, but you
pre-order
can-
this book immediately.
Yeah, pre-order
after
that book.
this.
It's called Joyful Recollections of Trauma. And I think that we're going to have like some pre-sale incentives and stuff like that. But definitely, look, I need to get on this New York Times bestseller list. I got to knock off Deepak Chopra or something.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. I can't wait
No, we
to
will
read
put a link
that.
to that in the notes, and that's so relevant and such a great way to conclude. Paul, thanks so much for doing this, and please come back on. We have
I will.
a million more movies to talk about.
Well, this is fantastic. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy Home Alone Die Hard Day.
Happily Home Alone Die Hard Day indeed.
The one video that I made one time that never worked, but I think it's still funny. I'm going to do my last joke here for you guys, which was I made a video saying Home Alone is a Christmas movie. And people were angry at that because it's like, like that debate about like I just wanted to debate like that is, but no one gets irony. You can't do it. I'm like, it's so clearly a Christmas
I
movie.
love it. Are you kidding me? That's amazing.
Genius.
So no one got
Home
that.
Alone
but
is
I
a
enjoyed
Christmas
it.
movie. Don't at me. I think it's the way to sell that.
Oh my God. All right. Well, gentlemen, it's such a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. This has been an incredible Christmas gift, and happy holidays to you and your loved
Happy
ones.
holidays.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Scheer. What a guy. I can't
What
believe
a
he wrote a
guy.
book that has a chapter about Home Alone in it.
Oh man, that really was like such a treat.
Special.
We've been hoping that we could make this work for a long time, and everything kind of lined up.
Oh, and we did it.
Just wonderful.
What a birthday gift to be able to talk about Home Alone with
Birthday
Paul
gift, Christmas
Scheer.
gifts. Speaking of gifts,
Oh yeah. Okay. So
it's
it's my birthday.
it's Liam. It's the great Liam G.
I'm
Billingham
not
Esquire's birthday.
I'm not gonna. My full name is Liam Gasson Billingham. Did you know that?
Wow.
Liam Gasson is the name of a building at Boston College. If you want to know how fucking Irish Catholic my family is.
Interesting. Well,
Should I unwrap this?
I dropped a gift off at Liam's house earlier today, and
Because it's December, both of our children are sick, so we didn't get near it. We like Spock hand through the glass. Yeah, it was beautiful. I read the card.
So
It was
you have
very
to-
sweet.
Yeah, I
I'll
want
open
to just take a moment to thank my partner in crime and dear friend Liam for everything he's done this year, because one, this has been a tough year for a lot of us in the entertainment industry with the strike and the writer's strike and actor's strike and all kinds of chaos, and we're all dealing with all kinds of difficult things, and doing this show with you truly is like a beacon of light in my life, and I'm deeply grateful for the time that we get to spend together doing this, and for all of the hard work that you do behind the scenes that is often really, really difficult and labor intensive. And I'm super, super grateful for everything. And just wanted to say that and wish you happy birthday. And
Thanks,
and
buddy.
You got a little gift now.
I will send you
can-
my end of year invoice. So just when you get that, All right. I read the card. I'm not going to read the card on the air, but the card was very nice, and it had a reference to. Was it Blown Away? Is there a Blown Away? The Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. No, that's not in Blown.
Well, it's
Is
just
that
a
Blown?
general. Yeah, I think it is in Blown Away. I think
All right, but I'm opening the gift.
Lloyd Bridges.
You can hear it opening, so enjoy the.
The suspense is building.
What is this? This shirt, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God. Okay.
Tell the listeners.
I can't. This is a T-shirt. Did you have this made?
I didn't have it made, but I found it with some digging.
It says, one side going up, we live in a twilight world. And on the other side going down, it says, there are no friends at dusk. Phil, just the way into my heart is to buy me a tenant-related paraphernalia. This is incredible. Thank you so much. I gave Phil a early Christmas gift, which is a Hans Gruber Christmas calendar where he falls one floor. You could say that if there was ever a gift made for Phil, it was that one. So I feel the same. I can't believe we're 30-something or close to 30 episodes in, and we've had Paul Scheer and Jamel Bowie and Sean Fennessy and all of the other people, Blake Howard,
Kyle
Brandt, all these wonderful
Nick
people
DeSamlian,
that I'm forgetting.
Ronald Young Jr.
Like an amazing group of people, and it's really fun. And yeah, I mean, it's so fun that we have a new review from a fan.
Oh, really?
Should I read it?
Great.
Yeah,
Please do.
These got a little, they dried up a little bit there for a while, but
Keep
now
them
they're
coming.
Keep them
coming,
we
guys.
need the reviews. You don't know how much
we need the validation. Desperately.
Okay, so the review is from Bow Creek. 5 stars. Terrific. I love this show. Just about every movie they've covered is a total banger and something I watched multiple times growing up. Every episode I've listened to gives me the itch to go watch the movie again. My favorite... I'm not getting emotional. I just have something in my throat. Each episode I've listened to gives me the itch to go watch the movie again. My favorite podcast discovery in a long time.
Aww. Thank you so much
Very
for
thoughtful.
that. That's lovely. There's one last thing I would like to say before we move on to our final outro, which we touched on this character. Paul quoted the line from him earlier. There's an actor who was a friend of mine and my neighbor. His name was Pete Siragusa, and he played the lineman who says, Marbell's going to be, it's like going to be a couple of days before Marbell figures us out. And he has this small part, and he was my friend and neighbor, and he moved I moved into his street where he'd been a long time, and we just became really good friends and just talked about baseball and sports, and he was like, would lend me a hammer if I needed it, or help me put up pictures. And sadly, he passed away last year. And he was just such a beloved figure. He actually had an incredible career, and he was in like a bunch of Coen Brothers movies. Like he's the guy talking to Sam Elliott in the bar, but you don't see him. Like he's like a guy
in Big Lebowski.
In Big Lebowski,
I watched that last night. Yeah, I watched that scene last night.
He's like a classic kind of case of there are no small parts, only small actors. Like had this incredible career as these little like scoring in a little cameo here and there, and was just a wonderful guy. Sadly, he passed away last year, so I wanted to dedicate this show to his memory and to the magic of cinema that keeps our friends and loved ones alive in this wonderful way.
And, there's actually no small stories in Hollywood, and I think that one of the great things about a story like that is it celebrates the people that sometimes aren't Bruce Willis or Macauley Culkin or any of those things. So nice for you to tell that story. Also nice to get more reviews like the one we got. So please rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. I'm at Liam G. Billingham on Twitter. The show is at DieHardOAB. Phil exclusively communicates on X now. He doesn't actually, I call him, this is actually a recording of Phil's X bot that does the show now. So if you need to reach Phil, where can they reach you?
At Philip Gawthorne at Twitter or whatever it is, right? I did a Ric Flair reference today. That's the kind of fun shit I'm doing.
Look at you.
I'm like, I'm doing zany shit on there. So find me on X and
next
get
time,
involved.
Next
with the
time,
bants.
You can find us in the air covering the film Drop Zone, which we went pretty deep on.
I love that movie.
You love that movie. That's coming up next year. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Take care of yourselves. Thanks so much for listening to the show this year, and we'll be back next time with Posse Comitus, which no one is going to get, but I get it.
All right.
Bye.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Love you all. Thank you so much for being part of this journey.
Bye-bye. Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast created and hosted by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Rate, review, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, tell your movie podcast-loving friends about Die Hard on a Blank. Special thanks to Suki Chu. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.